On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we're going to break down the goalie goal.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we take a look at three things from the Minnesota Wild's win against the St. Louis Blues. We'll talk about Filip Gustavsson's play in the net and offensively, as well as taking a look at the Wild being able to use separator goals to increase their lead. We'll talk about all of that with some audio from John Hynes, Filip Gustavsson, and Ryan Hartman as well. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild since 2021, credentialed Wild media member. And if you're not, we are going to talk about the goalie goal here today because what a fun way to end what was a pretty solid win for the Minnesota Wild against the St. Louis Blues last night, 4-1. The Wild kept the Blues off the board when they made their push, and the Wild used the third period to put the game out of reach because for the first time in Minnesota Wild history, a goalie goal. We'll hear from Filip Gustavsson on his approach and how he got a little encouragement from Marc-Andre Fleury to give it a try. Go get the thing. So a lot to get to here today, but we got to start and end with Filip Gustavsson, who was just tremendous in net once again. And I liked that John Hynes talked after the game about as good as he's been in just the standard just your normal type saves, as good as he's been there, it seems like Gustafson has been better when situations kind of break down, coverages get miscommunicated, things like that. When the plays don't go according to plan, it seems like Filip Gustavsson has been somehow even better than he has in just your everyday run-of-the-mill goalie situations.
And the PK, and he's kind of helping all over the ice right now with his performance.
Yeah, he's playing really solid. That's that's what you need to be able to win regularly in the league he's making the routine saves good, but he's also, there's mistakes and breakdowns in the game, and he's making key saves at key times. And usually when you get that, give yourself the best chance to win the game.
The Cairo stop on the PK after Lauko's goal, that one in particular.
Yeah, exactly. That was a big one, and that's, where you get those breakdowns. I mean, the other team's got good players too, so there's going to be real quality scoring chances at times, and he looks like he's really on his game. He's confident, and he's playing real solid.
So just looking at the numbers here, courtesy of moneypuck.com, goals saved above expected right now, and we're putting a minimum of 3 games on this because especially early in the season there are so many goalies that, hey, such and such goalie came in, played once, and had a shutout. And so that just, that brings their numbers up way higher, even though they've only gotten into 1 game. So we're going minimum of 3, the guys that you kind of expect to be, like your starters. Filip Gustavsson is currently 4th in the NHL with 3.5 goals saved above expected. His expected goals against right now is 8.52. He's given up 5 goals. And so if you break that down even over the course of like a game-by-game basis, Filip Gustavsson has taken a goal off the board every game that he's played so far this season, which tells you how critical he has been to the success of the Minnesota Wild so far. And it backs up certainly what we've seen in that his start to the season has been just tremendous. Goals against average, Gustafson is currently 3rd at 1.66. He's behind Jake Ottinger and Connor Hellebuyck in that span. But you look at it too, the expected goals against average for Connor Hellebuyck, for instance, 2.19. So he's been 1.52 goals against per game better than what is expected. Filip Gustavsson's 1.17. So these guys have been doing a really good job so far of keeping the opponents from scoring. But there are a lot of different numbers that I like about what we've seen so far from Filip Gustavsson. Save percentage on unblocked shots. So the shots that get through that nobody's able to get to. Second in the NHL with a .976 save percentage on those opportunities. The only one better is Connor Hellebuyck. Gustafsson's expected save percentage on those unblocked shots, .959, which is still very, very high, but he's been even better than expected in those areas. And as John Hynes talked about, in situations where the play breaks down or things kind of get in real close, let's start with the low danger unblocked shot attempt save percentage. Low danger chances, Filip Gustavsson is 8th in the NHL with a .973 save percentage, which is a little lower than what is expected, but still .973 is really good. Medium danger unblocked shot attempt save percentage. Filip Gustavsson is 2nd at .960. So we're thinking, from the top of the zone to the face-off circles is those low danger. Medium danger is right around the face-off circle area. He's 2nd in the NHL in terms of his save percentage in those opportunities. His expected medium danger unblocked shot attempt save percentage is .881. So you expect a goalie to give up some of those types of goals, and especially the high danger ones. You expect goalies to give up those types of goals. Filip Gustavsson has been 10%, roughly 10% better on those unblocked medium danger attempts than what is expected of him. In the high danger unblocked shot attempts, he is 6th in the league. He's got a 90% save percentage on those as well. And his expected save percentage on those high danger attempts is 70.7. So he's been way, way better against those high danger chances as well. But, that's what you want to see from a goalie, is the confidence being what really drives his play and is allowing him to just really, I think, be way more decisive. I keep going back to that word decisive, and I think I'm going to just keep using that here for the entirety of the season. He just, all of those 50-50 pucks, it seems like he is just not waiting for things to happen. He's making a play on them to take away some of that chance, some of that some of that unknown, that gray area. He's just making plays on those pucks to really control the outcome much better. But the other thing that I want to key in on is how the Wild have assisted Filip Gustavsson this season. Percentage of shot attempts blocked by teammates. Filip Gustavsson currently is 6th in the NHL with 23% of all shot attempts getting blocked before they even get to Filip Gustavsson. So it's been a lot of Filip Gustavsson, but let's give the team some credit too for blocking a high volume of shots before they even get to Gus in front of the net. And the only goalies who have a higher percentage, Darcy Kemper, Connor Ingram, Sam Montembeault, Aiden Hill, and Peter Mrazek. So the Wild defensively have done a good job of limiting chances getting through. And then when those chances do get through, Filip Gustavsson has been making plays on them and leading that to just a ton of goals, not even getting on the board because of how good he's been. So Gus has been really good, and it's led to a really solid start. And I think it has helped ease some of the concerns as to how is this, how are these starts all going to work out? If we get into this weird kind of Marc-Andre Fleury, Jesper Wallstedt split, and that doesn't go well, what happens if Gus gets off to a rocky start, and then all of a sudden now you've got 3 goalies and none of them are really able to step in and restore order? Gus has just from the drop. He's been really, really good. We've talked about it in the postcast. We've talked about it in previous episodes. Coming into the season in better shape, as has been pointed out many times. Denny's pointed it out in a couple of postcasts. Came in down 13 pounds. Came in a new dad. I think that's helped kind of refocus him and get him back towards the goalie he was a couple of seasons ago when he should have been a Vezina finalist. And now he's showing similar levels to that production over the early part of the season. I know it's 3 games, but you look at some of the things that go in the favor of this not just being like a hot start. Like the scoring chance save percentage. When a team has a scoring chance, Filip Gustavsson has a .919 save percentage. That would be a career high. High danger shot attempts. He's 10 for 10. That's a career high as of right now. And so, some of these numbers, there will be a little bit of a course adjustment. Right now, he's got an .857 save percentage on the power play. Some of these numbers will course correct. Some of them will stay strong, but hard not to be impressed with what we've seen from Filip Gustavsson so far to start the season. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that he scored a freaking goalie goal against the St. Louis Blues. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, including Marc-Andre Fleury basically egging Gustafson into doing it. So we'll hear from Gus, and we'll talk about something that I think kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes. Having fun out there. So that's all coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. NFL season, college football, the NHL, the NBA. They are all either underway or getting underway soon, which means that there's no better time to put yourself in position to watch your favorite team with some killer seats at Game Time. Game Time makes it so easy to pick your seats. You'll be spending all your time wondering where you're going to tailgate and what you're going to do before or after you go see your favorite team play. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And best of all, Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. How many of you have had that happen on other sites where you put somebody in your lineup only to find that they get injured in the first quarter before they've accumulated any stats? Hate it. Do not like. But Prize Picks has you covered. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast this week as well to get the lowdown on the first few games of the season. We talked yesterday on the Locked On NHL podcast about which teams we need to be panicked about. Colorado sitting 0 for right now. Should we be concerned? You can look at all of that on Locked On NHL, available wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, let's talk goalie goal, because Filip Gustavsson scored the first goalie goal in Minnesota Wild history, 15th goalie ever to score a goal in the NHL. But I think it helps just remind us of something that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But also, let's not dismiss the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury was the one that put Filip Gustavsson up to it. And once he put it out there, it was challenge accepted for Filip Gustavsson.
It happened. What were you
Yeah,
thinking?
no, we're felt a little sketchy there first on the power play there with 4 minutes left. We gave them a few chances, and then they took a timeout there with 36 seconds left or something, and Flower looked up at the board and it's like, yeah, we're up 2 goals. You should probably try it if you get the chance. Or you shooting, right? I was like, yeah, maybe I should.
You went to the bench and lowered
Yeah,
the
during the
field?
timeout there, it's like, yeah, we're up 2, because usually that's like coaches usually get very mad if you try and shoot it with only 1 goal lead, because usually it becomes icing if you miss it. So up 2-0, I was like, yeah, if I get the chance, I'll try it.
Your eyes had to be wide open because it was like the perfect shot for you to
Yeah.
shoot. I mean, it was.
Yeah,
right
no,
into your
it
glove.
was like I think it was their Diaz comes in and do it. They probably try and make me get a whistle and get a face off in our zone, and he just put it straight in the glove and try and put it down as quick as I could, and it just laid perfect there on the ice, and I just try and shoot it as hard as I could.
Freddie said that he's never seen you shoot that high when you guys practice.
No, I usually complain about my curve not being the right angle to get it that high, but I don't know, something extra powers or something.
How fun was that? So there's a lot to break down from this. Number one, Marc-Andre Fleury being the prankster that he is, the ultimate teammate that he is. How about him putting that in Gus's ear about, hey, we got a 2-goal lead? Because he's absolutely right. Like, the reason you don't see that happen as even remotely more frequently is just because at that point in the game, if the team has pulled their goalie for the extra attacker, you're usually down 1 goal. And so anytime you would do that, if a goalie would send the puck down to the other end and miss, it's an icing. And then you head right back into the offensive zone, which is an advantage for your opponent. So the opportunity doesn't present itself all that often. But there were a lot of elements that came together to make it happen, make it possible. Number one, as Gus alluded to, the Blues defense got pulled in even beyond the blue line, anticipating they were going to be able to attack or maybe to force a loose puck to Gustafson for a chance to get one back. That didn't happen. But and I forget which player it was exactly that got the puck to him, getting him a perfect pass right in front of the net to where he can even think about doing something like that. Like, there are a lot of little things that go into a goalie being able to make something like that happen. But I think the thing that really stuck with me is just how fun of a moment that was. And it's something that gets lost in the shuffle. It's something that got lost in the shuffle a ton last year. You get off to a really slow start, and the team is really fighting through it. There just weren't a ton of moments last year where you really look and you pinpoint as just true, really crazy fun moments that you can hang your hat on through the first part of the season. And now we have, it's going to be hard to top as the highlight of the season unless the Wild shock us all and go and win the Stanley Cup. So that is going to be one that the Wild will go back to a lot, I'm sure, because that's truly one of those unique highlight moments. And not only does it happen late in a game on the road, it happens against one of your rivals in the Central Division, and it happens against Jordan Binnington, And I know he wasn't in net, but it was his net in which that goal was scored. And so that's ate at him a little bit. And I don't know, that just kind of sweetens it up a little bit. Like, look, Jordan Binnington, great competitor, good goalie. I'm not pulling anything away from him there, but we've seen the battles between these teams over the last few years. Think back to what Ryan Hartman did to really lead to a Binnington meltdown in that 8-5 game where Fleury and Binnington almost fought. That kind of stuff happens, and so it was fun all around because I feel like the odds of that happening to the Wild are far better than having them do it to somebody else. And so for it to happen once to the Minnesota Wild it's just a lot of fun. It just was a fun way to cap a game in which the Wilds, they worked very hard. They battled in that game, and they sent the Blues home empty-handed. And one of the reasons that they were able to even put themselves in position to be able to try something like that at the end of the game is because they got separator goals. And so we'll talk about getting an early lead, but building off of it as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't have to have 90 million different tabs open like I do, tracking my fantasy football lineups, making sure everybody is performing at peak levels for me to win my matchup this week. FanDuel has everything all in one place, centralized, so you don't have to go searching for what you're looking for. And best of all, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And the best part of all, it doesn't have to be a winner. Win or lose, first $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed to get things started at FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com to take advantage of this great offer today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to keep with us as we move through the rest of the week to gear you up for Saturday's game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Nice for the Wild to have a couple of days off after a couple of strenuous road tests. Nice for them to just get a chance to kind of catch their breath after some very heavy minutes over the last few games. One key thing that just shocks me that this is even accurate, but it's true. The Minnesota Wild have not trailed for one single second this season. Not a second. They have had the lead or have been tied in every game. And in the 2 games that they lost in overtime, the moment you give up that goal, the clock stops and the shootout is untimed. So it's kind of it's one of those things that is way more fun to say than in terms of it actually meaning anything. But I thought Ryan Hartman's comments after the game were great in talking about, needing to both get the early lead, but also to further it, to put yourself in position to build up some cushion against the teams that you're playing on the road.
A little bit about that feed. It looked like you saw Kirill come in, turned around your defender and took off.
Yeah, I think first of all, we like you said, we've been getting early leads. I don't think we've extended the lead in those first games. We're getting the second goal, third goal, which we did tonight. So that was kind of a big focus point on getting leads and extending those leads and not letting up. I think last couple of games we've let up goals pretty quick after we scored to go up. So we cleaned that up a little bit tonight.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big key that Hartman mentions in that game, because if you look at what the Minnesota Wild have done over the course of the season, is if we go back to the first game of the year against the Columbus Blue Jackets, Matt Boldy scored with time winding down in the first to make it 1-0. But then the Blue Jackets got the second goal to tie the score up at 1-1. Wild then scored to take a 2-1 lead. And then in the third, Matt Zuccarello gets the goal to make it 3-1, the separator goal, so that when the Blue Jackets scored with under 3 minutes left to play to make it 3-2, you still have the lead, and the Blue Jackets have to expend further energy to try to get back into that game to potentially tie it. So it's like treading water. If you get the early goal, you get your head above water. Every time the opponent scores, you kind of get pulled under. And so it's just about trying to stay afloat and to try to put further pressure on the opponent that you face on a given night. In the game against the Seattle Kraken, the Wild did a good job. They did get a separator goal. So they got Zuccarello's goal, then Boldy's goal, but the Kraken scored 40 seconds later to make it 2-1. And so you don't have time to even really properly celebrate the goal before the Kraken have rallied to tie it. A few minutes later, Eberle scored to make it 2-2. Kirill scored a minute 41 into the third, but less than a minute later, the Kraken answered. And then Ryan Hartman scores 12 and a half in to the third. The Kraken score 4 minutes later. And so he's right on in build and hold a lead, build and sustain a lead, build and add to a lead. And, don't forget in that Seattle game, that goal that we thought Kirill Kaprizov had scored with time winding down, that would have potentially made it 3-2 at that point, heading into the intermission. And those goals that you score or give up in the final minute of a period can sometimes be backbreakers, because you've spent the entire period, like look at the Winnipeg game. You spent the entire period with the lead, really battling. And the Wilds, they took the early lead against the Jets, and they held that pretty much through the entirety of the first period. But the Jets, with less than a second to play in the first period, they get the goal from Mark Scheifele. There were, I guess, like 2 seconds left, but you get my point. Time winding down to where if you just can hold that lead going into the intermission, it feels way different going in 1-0 than it does being tied 1-1. So that's all a learning process, is doing what you need to do to make sure that you take that lead and you hold it, so that then the Wild could have tried in period 2 or period 3 to add, to make it 2-0 instead of 1-1. Now, again, end of the day, they got a point in Winnipeg on the road, which is, I think, that is better than I expected would happen. And so the battle in that game is still positive, but these are little details that unfold throughout the course of the season. And then in the Blues game, the Wild get the first goal 3 minutes, 50 seconds in, Ryan Hartman on the power play. They go into the first intermission with a 1-0 lead because the Blues thought they had a goal, but it got waved off. They go 2-0 into the second intermission after a goal came in after the buzzer for the St. Louis Blues. But again, it doesn't matter a ton in the grand scheme of things. It's just more of that mental lift that you get by going in having not allowed the team to score, or by having a 2-goal lead. It's just viewed from a different lens in those instances. And the Wilds took it from 1-0 to 2-0, scored within the first minute of the third period. And then, the Blues did get one back midway through the third, but the Wild kept pushing. And because they had built up a multi-goal lead, that got them the opportunity to just have a little fun with things and let Filip Gustavsson do his thing and score the goalie goal, which Of course, it was on the power play too. So Filip Gustavsson, there might be something to getting him in the power play meetings. Of course, I'm joking, but there might be something to getting him in the power play meetings if he can score from that far out to help the team win. So all in all, fun game, good win, and it's fun to see some of these things talked about after games that reinforce what the Wild are doing, because they've had a couple of solid wins. They've battled hard in the other two games and have just come up short. And through 4 games, the battle level has been better than it was last year. Like it was so hard to get traction last year after that disastrous start, constantly playing from out of a trying to dig out of a hole. And so at this point in the season, getting a goalie goal leads you to feeling pretty good 2 games into this road trip with some very tough games coming up. But we'll keep you up to date on all of that, of course, here at Locked On Wild. Make sure to hit the like button before you head out here for the day, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll have a new episode coming up for you tomorrow, as we always do every Monday through Friday, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. So take it easy. We'll catch you on the next one here at Locked On Wild.